What is going on, everyone? Nick from Comic Culture here. Time for Nick at Night, my weekly comic book review show. Oh my god, we got a big stack of comics to get through, so let's get into them right now. Amazing Spider-Man issue number 4, Hickman, and we have Messina on here as a guest artist. I will say this book is probably my least favorite book of the series so far. There's a lot of conversations in here, specifically around Peter and Mary Jane going on a double date with Harry and a mysterious wife. I'll let you figure out who that is. Pretty cool, like, revelation. It's just another familiar character we know in this universe. They're talking about a lot of the different things that they're working on in their jobs, and they have interesting titles and things like that. And Harry and Peter, they're having more conversation about, like, really, I don't know, taking on this, like, superhero thing full time and trying to, like, mature what that looks like. But with that said, it's just a ton of, like, 9-panel grids right on here. Speaking of 9-panel grid, go down below in the description and subscribe to Eric's channel down there. Great reviews as well. But these kind of 9-panel grids are not something you really want to see over and over and over and over again, specifically when it's related to the kind of conversation that they're having and there's no action scenes, anything like that. So it's a big conversation issue. Now, Kakato's not on the art this time, so maybe it has something to do with that. Who knows? The art itself is fine for what it is. Again, there's no big dramatic scenes or anything like that. It's all just kind of like building up to a head, right? I think. So, Ultimate Spider-Man issue number 4, weakest one so far. We're going to see what comes out of this, though, in the remaining story. Next, we have another Hickman book, Gods issue number 7. I believe there's one more issue after this one, which leads me to believe, like, I don't really know what the story is really about. Like, what is it building towards? I have no clue. This particular book focuses on Dimitri, which is kind of like, I don't know, the assistant or handler of Wynn. They're both on the Order of Natural Things. And this is a history lesson on who he is, who his parents were, some of the internal demons that he's still fighting right now, and the lengths he'll go to bring back some of his missing family members. He sets up a really complicated device, does some time continuum stuff, space-time continuum messing around, and puts himself in a position where he potentially can, like, save his family that's been lost since he was a kid in some, like, Russian space program. And it's cool, it's impactful, it's got some emotion behind it. It's fun to see this come together. I love the artwork and everything. And there's a real touching moment at the end, but I don't know what all these issues are building towards. I think we only have one more to go, and I'm not entirely sure what we're doing right now. So, issue number 7, it's a great, like, standalone issue, but, like, in the grand scheme of things, what are we doing here? No idea. Would you guys read it? What'd you guys think? Blade issue number 10. Man, this has been a great series so far from Brian Hill and team. There's been some art shifts and things like that, some coloring issues here and there, but I would say overall it's great to see Blade have a little bit of a spotlight and something to do, some kind of grand evil to take on. I like the ancillary characters. They've been really fun as well. Like, he has a reason to protect them. They're interesting. They don't do a whole lot, but they're kind of cool characters that are in the background. Blade's been kicking ass for 10 issues right now, working his way up to Adina, and this is the big battle, the big conclusion of all of that right there. And, you know, with that said, the only big concern that I have, or not concern, but rather, like, criticism that I have is it's kind of abrupt. It's just like, we've been leveling up, we've been powering up, we've been, learning all these new abilities and things like that. And we get to that spot and the battle just happens. And it was a cool battle and it was a collaborative battle, which was interesting. But again, it kind of ends fairly quickly. The back half of this book is all it takes. And so we don't quite know, like, what the repercussions are coming out of that necessarily. And then I know we've been plastering Blood Hunt on the back of everything. So it's like, okay, maybe I'll check out a title or two of that. But, like, I would love to have, like, an ongoing series of this, to be honest with you, instead of dropping this now and going into a little event that's probably not going to be great. And it's going to be over in a couple of months. And so that's kind of where I am with Blade right now from Brian Hill. Let me know if you guys read it. What'd you guys think? Batman Dark Ages issue number 2, going over to DC, Mark Russell. We have the Allreds on the art side of this. What a spectacular book. I don't know how people can reimagine Batman, his origin story, as many times as we've seen it so far, including the villains as well, and it still be interesting. But damn it, man, he's just found another way to do it. It's a very familiar story. We know how he grows up. We know about the parents' tragedy. We know about the impact on his personal life and what he does to, like, rise up to stop crime around Gotham, around the world. This takes those same concepts, those same story beats, but it reimagines how it could happen to get to the same conclusion kind of towards the end. So this is very much a evolution of a young Bruce Wayne post his parents' death, like learning how to cope, learning how to deal with authority figures, things like that, growing up with Alfred and whatnot, and then learning his abilities in ways that we haven't seen before, but still utilizing familiar characters that we know to exist inside of this realm. So it's a whole new way of looking at Batman. This is an Elseworld story, even Elseworld compared to Superman's Space Age as well. It's not the same Batman we saw in that story. But man, he still finds a way to make it relevant, to make it interesting and just fun to read. So big props to the art team here. Mark Russell's doing a great job. All Reds are killing it. Batman Dark Age #2, definitely worth it. Check it out. Detective Comics from Ram V. This is issue number 1084. I can never remember the issue numbers because it's so high up there. So this is winding down the big operatic event that Ram V has been putting together over the last several issues. And so this is our return to Gotham moment for Batman, just trying to get reacquainted with like the different villains and the Orgum and how they're doing stuff, right? Meeting with Jim, kind of like figuring out where to go from there. He's in a different headspace right now. Physically and mentally, honestly. And he's got this new plan to really light a fire on the powers that be right now. Really cool conversation with Selina in here as well. Again, just reiterating that he's not the same man that he was going back into the desert. And he's definitely got the attention of the Orgum family right now. So I'm excited to see where it goes from there. Of course, there's a little backstory featuring Cassandra Cain. So if you're into her, you're going to love this, what you see in the back of this. Great art in this book as well. It's been a really fun series overall. It's going to make a great collected read if you haven't yet. So Detective Comics, I'd say it's worth it. Let me know if you're reading it down below. All right, let's go over to Boom Studios. We have Once Upon a Time at the End of the World, issue number 14 from Jason Aaron. Love this story so far. It's a great post-apocalyptic story about two people meeting each other in the least likely way possible. They end up falling in love, but it's a really exploration of like the toxicity of a relationship in general and how things can get spun out of context and how people can hurt each other. And just like that, how that resentment can build and build and build over the years, in this case, probably decades, and things happen to just kind of come to a head and people are reacquainted with former lovers. And like, what do you do in this kind of a landscape when that happens? So I'm just really in love with these two characters right now, just kind of like getting back together. They're both forced to team up with each other yet again against these different wastelanders, trying to get to this, basically this reality engine to reshape the entire planet. And so it's just filled with gore and brutality and just insane stuff. But there's also that emotional piece peppered into this story as well, because they have such a crazy history with each other. And we have like a Garden of Eden type situation at the end and some pretty big threats yet to conquer inside of this book. So it's been a great read so far. Once Upon a Time at the End of the World. Definitely pick that up in like a trade if you haven't just yet, but it's awesome. Let me know if you read it. Next is Rare Flavors issue number 5 from Ram V and Felipe Andrade. This series is going to be winding down as well. So I know that in the previous issues, towards the end of a couple of them, we see basically the presentation of this documentary, and we see basically like our devil's sidekick, right, in the audience looking at an empty chair. So like there was a little bit of foreshadowing in the very beginning of this that they're both not going to make it out of this thing one way or the other. And so we've been slowly building up, introducing some demon hunters. We get the background of those two hunters inside of the story, and it's just like it's a really cool snapshot into the past to see like what is their motive, what are they trying to achieve here. Obviously this dude's an evil like demon and he has some cannibalism things going on, but it does go a little bit deeper than that. They have some personal reasons to look into him, and so there's kind of like a realization here that maybe he has to remove himself from the equation one way or the other. Maybe he's changed, maybe he's grown, maybe he's witnessed so much beauty in the world, so much flavor in the world that he doesn't have to go down the same paths as he always has in the past, and so he can evolve and become something new. I think that's what they're trying to get at in this story right here, and we're going to have our grand conclusion in the next issue, I believe. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this story wraps up. It's been a great journey so far, mixing like cuisine with just like lessons learned in life in general. So pretty cool book so far. Rare Flavors issue number 5. Did you read it? What'd you guys think? Something is Killing the Children issue number 36. Tynan's back over here with Deladera. And I will say that this story was a little bit confusing. I feel like it was trying to take up right where we left off, but there was a flashback 5 years ago thing on here as well. So like I couldn't wrap my head around where exactly we are anymore inside of this story. So it's like, okay, 5 years ago from the previous story. Okay, so like I can't remember where she was then. I don't remember the state of the relationships with her and the different orders, you know, the Black Masks and all these people. So like it was kind of hard to put my brain back into that perspective and just like remember all that stuff. That being said, there is a moment in here, there's a vibe in here where it's kind of taking us back to basics, right? So Erica's out there hunting down some big threat that's been killing things. There's a little twist on it, which honestly, it kind of worked and kind of didn't work at the same time. These monsters feed on fear, right? And so like, okay, so usually it's the perception or it's the fear of a child that we're having to deal with and we see manifest. There's a little bit of a twist inside of this issue that we have to consider in here. Ultimately, it really doesn't mean anything. And it was kind of like a one and done kind of an issue. So it almost feels like, hey, we're back, but like we're not going anywhere yet. It's a 5-year flashback. That's what I got out of this. I'm not entirely sure. Something's Killing the Children. What'd you guys think? Man's Best issue number 2, Boom Studios. So a lot of love for issue number 1. Didn't quite click with me, to be honest with you. We're in a period right now where we have like talking animals teaming up with each other, taking on impossible odds. We see it in Feral. We see it in this. I'm sure there's some other books out there. This happens in comics. You get 3 wrestling books at the same time. You get a couple different robot books at the same time. This is just another one of those with a slightly different take on it. And I gotta say, it is pretty cool. There is a group of animals, support animals, that are survivors of this crashing spaceship, and they're having to deal with all these different robots that are around right now that they've trained in like a danger room type situation to survive. But like the odds are completely stacked against them. And the only way out of this situation is just like complete teamwork to get out of this. And so, of course, there's some different personalities that they have to account for. And there's a lot of crazy stuff going on. And they get to meet some of the other strange alien locals that they're not used to. And there's a pretty impactful moment at the very end of the book, I would say, which I think, you know, like definitely saves the story, to be honest with you, because it's hard to be around this many like high stakes, like this much of danger, and not have some kind of problem with that, some kind of a casualty of that situation. So it does a good job of like reeling in the story, making it more relatable. But, you know, I think unfortunately I'm going to need another issue or so to kind of solidify my feelings for the book, to be honest with you. I don't know if I want to do that. I don't know. I'm in a weird spot right now with this book right here. Let me know if you guys read it down below. Conan the Barbarian, issue number 10 from Titan Comics. Man, this book has never been bad, I don't think. Even when the story after the first arc kind of dipped a little bit, it was still one of the better books that came out each week. So big props to the team on this. It definitely has like an older vibe to it as well. So I think if you're a historical Conan the Reader fan, I think you're going to jump into this and feel just fine. But I think more importantly, if you haven't been reading Conan just for whatever reason and you wanted to jump into this run right here, we're only 10 issues in still, so definitely check it out. You're going to be just fine. You're going to learn what you need to learn about this character, and you pick it up naturally through the story and the interactions that he has with other people. You just know who the character is by the time you read like issue number 1, which is so cool about this character that it doesn't require a whole lot of backstory. You don't need to know his past relationships or his past triumphs or failures or collaborations. You don't need all that stuff to understand who this character is, because it's just such a primal character that you just understand his intentions immediately. He just wants to survive, and he's a badass ass guy out there. That's all you need to know. So this story continues the chaos from the previous story. We have an ancient evil that's resurrecting these demon type characters, and now we're teaming up with this king because we got sent back in time via some magic, and we're taking the battle right to this evil source, right? And so what does that mean? We're exploring that inside of this issue. So Conan the Barbarian, issue number 10, solid book. Overall, definitely check it out. All right, let's go over to Mad Cave. We have Dick Tracy, issue number 1. We have 2 different writers on this one, Segura and Morisi. So, big Dick Tracy fan growing up. I love the movie, things like that. I played the NES game growing up and stuff like that. So, like, I know Dick Tracy from my childhood. So I was really excited to see like this kind of a cover. Like this looks really, really cool just from the cover alone. But what do we get inside of here? First off, lots of action inside of this one. Way more gore than I expected. We still get a Dick Tracy who's fairly like new to the city. He's a well-received or well-decorated detective and like hero in his sense, but like this is a good place to jump in if you're not familiar with who he is in general. He's just a really formidable person right now. He's still meeting some of the villains. The villains are perceived as like being new to the area, don't know who he is. So if you don't have a lot of experience with Dick Tracy, you can definitely jump inside of here. We have this woman digging for clues because someone in her family was murdered in this big hit at this diner, and Dick Tracy's teaming up with her. And of course, there's some familiar villains inside of the Dick Tracy universe trying to stop all that as well. So lots of action, lots of gore, really great place to jump in if you don't know who Dick Tracy is. Really excited to see where this story goes overall. And so yeah, definitely check this one out from Madcade. Let me know if you read it down below. Let's jump over to Fantagraphics for Mythologies and Apocrypha, issue number 1 from Tim Lane. Now, pretty much anything that Fantagraphics puts out in a single issue format, I'm going to try to grab and check out, because they're usually done really, really well. Very interesting creators. Like the production value inside the books is really respectable. Hardcover stuff, like even fake ads and stuff like that littered throughout this entire thing. It's not like a Marvel book where every other page is a 2-page splash for whatever throwaway events coming up pretty soon. So props to Fantagraphics for doing a great job on these kinds of books. So what is this about? Basically, we're spotlighting the relationship between Steve McQueen and Frank Sinatra and the movies that they were putting out back in the day, the public perception of both of those people, how Steve McQueen's like career got skyrocketed because of that collaboration, and some of the other interactions that Frank Sinatra had with other very well-known pop figures back in the day, like Elvis and whatnot. Black and white drawing, absolutely gorgeous interior artwork in here. There's not going to be any kind of coloring, but like who would want coloring with line work like this? Lots of talking heads, lots of mixing nonfiction and fiction when it comes to storytelling about like the legacy of these characters and who they were and what they did like in their free time. So like as you're reading this, you don't quite know what was real and what isn't real if you haven't like heard these interviews, right? Really cool book, blending of fantasy and reality, really recognizable characters, just like some insane artwork in here as well. So really, really well done. Mythologies, what a great, great book this was right here. Looking forward to more of them. I don't even know if more are coming out, but definitely keep your eye out for these. If you haven't read it yet, let me know if you did though, down below. All right, next we have the Six Fingers, issue number 3 from Dan Waters, the companion piece to Ram V's One Hand. So if you want the detective's point of view, read Ram V's book. If you want the serial killer's point of view, you can read this one, but definitely read them together because these books are kind of like overlapping in timeline, and you're learning things in one book that apply to the other book. So they're great little companion pieces, which, you see other series try to do, but this one executes on it pretty well. So again, this one's focusing on our serial killer, and we get to see basically what he is seeing when he's being possessed or like tapping into the matrix, for a lack of a better term. And I think that's exactly what we're dealing with right here. There's some kind of a code or a message or some kind of a veil put over the world he is able to access at will, or maybe when he's under certain kinds of stress. And we're exploring that a little bit more in here. We got hints of that in the previous book, but this one's like literally walking us through what his perception is and how he's able to do the things he's able to do. Maybe not how he's able to do it, but like we see him doing it. And so we're going to get some more explanations, I would imagine, in the future issues. Of course, in the last issue of The One Hand, we had this brutal murder scene that we get to relive inside of here. And that's when like the Matrix veil starts showing up and we get to see exactly like what the message is behind all this. So again, really cool book. I like to see these two issues bounce back and forth, and they provide you just a little bit more context. We don't have all the answers yet. We're just barely getting into it at this moment, but really cool crime noir, gory book with a detective point of view and a killer point of view with some kind of like Matrix visage over everything. Definitely check this one out if you haven't yet. All right, next we have Dan Waters' Ram V on Universal Monsters Creature from the Black Lagoon, issue number 1. I love Tynan and Martin Simmons' Dracula book that came out a little while ago. Like every issue was a banger. Absolutely love that one. Great story, great art, great complementary piece to that mythology or to that universe in general. Creature from the Black Lagoon is taking place after the movie, and it's really focusing on this detective who was almost a victim of this murder, and she's like reliving this drowning moment with this guy over and over again, and she's getting on some leads, right? She's going overseas and she's trying to find this dude, and there's some reports of like similar murders in this one certain area, and she's investigating what that looks like, trying to look at like surveillance cameras, trying to find this guy, figure out what's going on, which leads her, of course, into the jungle, and lots of confusion happens at that moment. She starts having some flashbacks, things like that, and we get a little appearance of our creature towards the end here, but we haven't quite figured out what this all means just yet. I will say it didn't quite give me enough story in this first issue to really get me hooked. I don't really care about the character so much right now. Like I want more creature. We're going to get there, I would imagine. But first issue, not bad. Could have been better. Art was okay. Doesn't require you to know anything about the Creature from the Black Lagoon going into this, which is great for new people. So overall, it was okay. Looking forward to seeing where it goes from here, though. Let me know if you read it down below. Next one from Image, we have Feral issue number 2 from Fleece and Forstner. Now, I did not really like issue number 1 all that much. There was some things in it that just didn't make any sense. There was like some like ghost dogs or maybe hallucinations or something. We didn't have the motive or the rationale for why we were in the situation we were in. We just know that there's some feral or some rabid animals in this woods, and there was a crash, and all these other like house cats and whatever got trapped in the woods, left alone, and now they're having to get out of this hellish landscape where everyone seems to be infected. This is obviously analog for like a zombie apocalypse kind of a thing. So like what does a zombie apocalypse look like from the point of view of a house cat and a house dog? That's what we got going on right here. I will say issue number 2 is way stronger than issue number 1, I think. I had a great time reading this one. The colors and the art in this, the line work, everything is so crisp and clean. It looks like it's layered. It looks like a freaking Disney animated show. It's just so cool. The characters I'm not too concerned with just yet because I'm still having a hard time like understanding their voices or like, okay, the yellow one has this kind of an attitude. The white one has that kind of an attitude. Like that's where I am still in my mind. So it's going to take a little bit of time to figure out, but I love the situations that they're in. Again, the art's incredible. And I'm really starting to appreciate exactly what we're trying to accomplish here, which is great. So Feral issue number 2, way better than issue number 1, I think. A lot more straightforward. I get the idea where we're going with this. And there's a couple little time bombs that they planted in here as well, which I can't wait to see come to life. So yeah, not too bad. Did you guys read it? What'd you guys think? Next, we have Joshua Williamson on Duke, issue number 5. I'm having a blast with these Energon books, especially with like Duke and Cobra Commander, books that I didn't think that I would necessarily love, but the execution, the art, and the little story, and the amount of excitement I have, issue to issue is just insane. So I really appreciate what they're doing inside of here. Duke's just like getting his ass kicked right now. He's basically at the mercy of Destro and some of his goons at this moment. And what I really like about these books overall, it's a different art team, obviously, and a different writing team, depending on which book you're reading, like Transformers or Duke or whatever, or Cobra. But they all share very similar artistic takes on how they want to present action in these books. So if you read any of them, no matter who's drawing them, you're going to get very familiar themes, action sequences, things like that. They're not ripping each other off, but they're at least giving you like a cohesive approach to all these different stories. So you feel like you're in the same shared universe, which is great. Like the scene right here, where Duke is ripping apart this dude right here. Like that scene, the way it looks, the way it functions, the onomatopoeia in there, the way that it's just roughly drawn, things like that, that kind of stuff you can expect in all the other books. So props to them for putting together a cohesive universe. And this book here really kind of showcases where we're going to go next. Like, what is the next stage? Duke is still on a revenge mission. Remember, he saw one of his friends get killed by this transforming like plane in the middle of the sky. Now he's aware that there's a lot more of these things out there, so he's going to be teaming back up with some people and taking the threat forward some more. So Duke issue number 5, great series. We're going to have a couple more series spin out of this as well. Looking forward to all of them. Get your wallets ready. Great book. What'd you guys think? The Forged, issue number 7 from Rucka. Man, this is a book that I've been really enjoying. If you want a sci-fi fantasy mech kind of a thriller book, definitely check this one out. We're 7 issues in, but this is a big boy. It's magazine sized. It's like extra long, and it's just a really cool like sci-fi mech kind of a book. We have a whole civilization that exists out there right now. This mech team called the Forged. They're like bred and born just for the purpose of creating this like elite security team, and they're run by different factions in this whole entire universe, but they realize that the mode of transportation they use to connect all their different cultures, it's like a wormhole type environment, I think they call it T-Space, is actually being infested with this alien life form we get to see in the first issue, and now they're sending in like the best of the best to take this threat on, and like all hell completely breaks loose inside of here. There's a lot of politics and things like that in here too. There's these Cassandras, like these precog kind of beings as well, playing chess with all the different pieces, so it's really cool to see all these different things come together. The characters are fairly recognizable, especially the leaders in our main team right here. We get introduced to a couple other Forged teams as well, so really great book from this team. I really recommend checking this one out. Issue number 7's out now. It's a great read. Let me know if you're reading it down below. All right, next from Dark Horse, we have Dawn Runner issue number 2. Rom V's on this one with Evan Cagle. Great art in the first one. I agree with some of the criticisms I heard about like, it's just a little bit too much. When you have a kaiju fight, especially a robot versus a giant kaiju, it's great to have some really kinetic and powerful scenes, but you also need a certain level of clarity to really identify what is happening inside of that battle. So I get the criticisms from the first one. The other one was it doesn't feel like a Rom V book, and I agree. It actually carries over into this one as well. But with that said, our main character right here, she's kind of like the champion of the Dawn Runners. I don't even know if that's what they're called, to be honest with you. She's basically a pilot of this brand new mech suit where she almost completely assimilates, almost like a tank in like the Matrix, right? She like goes into this goo, this little pod of goo, and all these different wires connect to her. It's almost like Ghost in the Shell like, and she pilots like this impossibly advanced mech right here against whatever the threats are. And so we're dissecting exactly what happened, because there's a moment in the battle where she blacks out. She has some kind of a trippy, like, reality layering experience going on. And then she fights this beast after she wakes up in a way that no one's ever seen before, like the most brutal way possible. So we're exploring that blackout period. What did she experience? We learn a little bit more about the mech in this one too, like how it's able to operate, what kind of a computer chip is needed to pilot or to have this kind of a thing function appropriately. So we're getting to understand a little bit more about the reality layering that we saw in the first issue. Still a lot of questions. We got a few answers, which is great. Great artwork and everything. I'm going to need another couple issues to really solidify my feelings about the book. Right now, it's not bad. So if you're into kaiju stuff, you might want to check it out. Matt Kintz, if you find this I'm Already Dead issue number 3, the conclusion of this story right here. And overall, I would say it wasn't bad. I think issue number 1 was great. I like the idea of a wormhole appearing in space just above the planet that we can access. And it's a completely hostile planet that has ties to different civilizations, even maybe a human civilization, or at least the impact of how we treat each other has rubbed off on this whole civilization, and things have gone out of control over time to create this just insanely hostile environment. So we have our war correspondent, but we also learned that she has some other motives as well throughout this issue right here as the only surviving member of this task force that was sent in there. So she basically has to survive and infiltrate. She learns a little bit about the power structure inside of here and who's really like pulling the strings behind the scene of this entire culture, which was cool. But I would say like the resolution of the issue itself, like how she figured out how to beat the odds here, and then the steps to take to do that, it happens just way too quick. So I do think this has really required another issue or two to make it feel cohesive, not rushed, like it was planned, and just had more logical steps to take to get to where we ended up getting at the end of this issue right here. So overall, not a bad concept, a little bit poor execution. I wish it was another issue or two. That's the bottom line there. Let me know if you read it down below. Then the last book we read this week was Distillery's Spectrograph issue number 1. We have Christian Ward on here and James Tynan doing the writing. And so of course it's the Distillery format that we all have gotten accustomed to at this point. This book was interesting. I think it's a book where the concept is really interesting. There's no ghosts in this world. That's just where we are. But this guy spent so much money researching the occult, wanting to find ghosts, wanting to do this, like collaborating with all these really weird people across the world, that he kind of like forces ghosts into existence using tons of money and resources and technology that no one's ever heard of before. And I think that's really where we're going right now. It's like, what is the repercussion of that? Like, what happened to this guy? What did he unleash on the world? What kind of a machine did he create? We follow this realtor right now who's got some kind of like stupid personal problem that she's trying to solve for the first third of this book, which is like ridiculous. I don't know how that's going to matter in the future, to be honest with you, besides having some kind of like tragic event. But she's trying to sell this house right now to some people who are interested. She gets a little bit of a glance at who they are. They're really like shady, weird characters, kind of hanging out in the background. There's this one girl who's taking point on this transaction, and they get a tour of the house. And this one person's really interested in a specific room in this house. And we get to understand a little bit more like why she might be interested in this. But she's acting kind of like weird once she kind of gets what she wants. It's like she's really insisting on being in a certain spot or learning more about the house itself, but when she gets there, she starts freaking out, you know? So it's just like, okay, what did you expect was going to happen? So like, there's a couple moments inside this book where it just doesn't work. I don't care about the realtor and her weird problem that she has right now that she's trying to solve. I don't really understand the response to the person who is eager to figure out what's going on inside this house or like turn the machine on, I guess. But I think the overall story, like the core of the story, is going to be interesting. The execution is going to be what's going to question right now. So Spectrograph issue number 1, again, cool concept, not executed perfectly just yet. So we'll see what happens in the next issues. But guys, man, that was a ton of books. Let me know what you read and what your favorite books of the week were down below. While you're down there, like, subscribe, share, hit that bell notification to be alerted whenever I put out new videos. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you in the comments.